Sup guys, I just want to do a quick little video here regarding the controversy about the name of the Type 63/65. Now you're going to be like, oh Nathan, what's the controversy? It's the Type 63, or you're adamantly in belief it's the Type 65. Well, even Wikipedia can't make its mind up. You go on the Wikipedia page, it says the Type 63 anti-aircraft gun. But the moment you click on the first picture of it, it labels it the Type 65. So, what the fuck's the deal with this? Well, I'm going to tell you what, in my opinion, I think the story behind this vehicle is, and I'd like to hear what you guys think of it. So first, let's know what we know for a fact. We know for a fact that it has the Type 58, or a T-3485 chassis. The Type 58, for those who don't know, is basically a locally produced or refitted T-3485. The main difference is it has a double cupola. That's basically it, and it was more easy to produce for the Chinese, more limited factories. The second thing we know for a fact is the guns mounted in it are the Type 65 twin 37mm AAAs, produced by Noriko, or Noriku, or however you pronounce it, the North China Industries Group, which is a direct copy of the twin V11 variant of the Soviet 1939 37mm gun family. So, we know for a fact it's this gun. So that immediately puts a damper in the works of it being called the Type 63. Because you can't, the way the Chinese naming system works is, the vehicle is named after the year it entered production. So, for example, the Type 58 entered production in 1958. The Type 51 AA unit entered service in 1951. So, automatically, that rules out the name of the Type 63. Because to have entered production, it means the chassis had to have existed with the gun mounted on it 2 years before it entered production, which is a physical impossibility unless the Chinese have wormhole technology. So we've automatically ruled that name out. So then I was like, well, let's have a look for historical images of this vehicle. Like, if there's a few of them, we know it's a production variant. And I looked up the pictures, and lo and behold, all the pictures of this vehicle, in Vietnam, in America, like, every picture you find is the exact same vehicle. It's this vehicle that is currently on display at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds in the United States. So I was like, well, let's look into the story behind the one at the Aberdeen. So the history of this vehicle starts back in 1965, the glorious year of, China's involvement in the Vietnam War. What occurred was China before this time was unable to assist the Viet Cong in any real way, because Mao's Great Leap Forward had created a massive famine that killed 45 million of his own people. This big setback meant that their production was limited. So when the Type 65 entered service, it was their first mass-produced SPAA-capable vehicle. It was just their first mass-produced one. So with that, they were able to give aid to the Viet Cong, their communist brethren, if you were. So we know the gun entered Vietnam in 1965. According to the files at Aberdeen, this vehicle was captured in 1965, so it had a really short window of actual combat service. So I was like, well, that means there must have been more, because if there was only one, how is there one? So I started looking at the actual model of it. Why is there a huge gaping hole where the machine gun port is? And that made me think, was this vehicle actually made by the Chinese? So I looked into the Viet Cong and their use of guerrilla tactics. And it turned out they had a lot of really, really bad experiences with the M42 Duster. Because it turns out being shot by large caliber 40mm high explosive rounds is not good for the human body. So it turned out the Viet Cong manufactured this locally as a guerrilla homemade tank. They lopped the turret off a provided T-34 or a Type 58 and mounted their own homemade chassis to it. The homemade turret. Using a Type 65. You'd be like, oh Nathan, no, this is bullshit. This didn't happen. I'm like, oh, motherfucker, it did. Because someone posted a fucking image. So, there is an image of 3 more guerrilla-made Viet Cong tanks here. We have a Type 58 or a Type a T-3485 with a 57mm AA gun mounted in it, which was probably stolen. It's probably a one the Russians gave the Chinese in the early 50s, and then the Chinese then passed it on to the Viet Cong. We have a locally produced Type 55 AA gun mounted on top of an Su-76, and we have a twin 23mm mounted on another 76 Su. So what we have here is 3 more guerrilla tanks. And also you'll notice that the Type 58 here also lacks the machine gun hole. So this basically made me realise what the fuck happened. Basically, the Chinese gave guns and obsolete tanks to the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong had a bad experience with the Duster, so they decided to mount these guns on their tanks to have an equal close quarters, close support sort of vehicle. What happened was the Americans then captured this Type 65 and decided, you know what, this must be a new Chinese class of vehicles, because we know the Chinese have just got involved giving aid to the Viet Cong. This must be one of their experimental new types of vehicles, so they gave it a NATO designation in the Chinese numeral system. But it turns out that there wasn't a new designation here. This was a guerrilla tank. There was only one of them. So, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a one-off, mistakenly named as a Chinese vehicle? Why are there only photos of one example if there were more? Like, comment, do all that good stuff down below. Do you think I've cracked the code here? Do you think it was a Viet Cong produced vehicle? Keep on gaming and have a good one.